Running an online business means constantly working to improve your website to boost sales and grow your business. However, there are some common mistakes that can hurt your website sales, even if you have great products or services and a solid marketing strategy. Today, we're going to discuss the top 5 things that might be hurting your website sales and how you can fix them. So join me as we explore these critical issues and learn how to turn things around to maximize your online sales. Welcome to the E-commerce Made Easy podcast. I'm your host, Carrie Saunders. When we started this business, all I had was a couch, a laptop, and a 9-month-old. My main goal? To help others. Now, with over 20 years in the e-commerce building industry and even more than that in web development, I have seen a lot. I love breaking down the hard tech into easily understandable bits to help others be successful in their online business. Whether you're a seasoned e-commerce veteran or just starting out, you've come to the right place. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into the world of e-commerce together. Welcome back to the E-commerce Made Easy podcast. Today, we're focusing on something critical for every business owner, the top 5 things that could be hurting your website sales. It's not always about the products or the services that you sell, but how you present them and create the experience that encourages your visitors to buy. So let's dive into these pitfalls and explore how you can avoid them to boost your sales. Now, if you're anything like me, I know that I will get really busy in running my business and forget to check these things off. So I feel like these are a great reminder, not only to myself, but all of you out there listening, whether you're, driving in your car or walking your dog or on a run, process through these things. And then if you need to, come back to the podcast later and take some notes. Because I know when we absorb information twice, it really helps and really gets us to really think about it and maybe act upon it too. So first off is slow page loading times. Now, we talk about this sometimes on the episode. It's something I've frequently talked about before, and it's one of the biggest reasons customers leave a website is slow loading times. In today's fast-paced world, people expect websites to load in the blink of an eye. In fact, studies show that a delay of just a few seconds can significantly increase your bounce rate and reduce customer satisfaction. So you really need to get the speed of your website down to a minimum. And to fix this, I want you to regularly check your website speeds. We're going to link to several different tools in our show notes, and they are Google Page Speed Insights, GTmetrix, and webpagespeedtest.org. So we're going to link to those, so don't worry about having to remember them. But I personally like to use all 3 of those tools. They provide a little bit different perspective, and I feel like they also kind of give like a gut check on the other one because they are testing your website from different locations in the world, as well as kind of doing it in a little bit different, nuanced way. They're very similar, but kind of different. So I like to use all 3. I'm an engineer. I like to use all 3 and really kind of aggregate them together. Now, if you don't want to use all 3, then I recommend at minimum using the Google Page Speed Insights because that's really what Google's going to be looking at. But I do find that the other 2 tools can give you even a little bit more in-depth as to how to fix your website. Now, some of the things you're going to need to do is optimize your images. Now, we have an episode and a freebie on how you can optimize your images. So we'll link to that in the show notes too. So you'll want to make sure that you're using optimal images for the web. Many times we'll find customers who will have a really large, beautiful image. It might load fine on desktop. It might be fast enough for that. But on mobile, it's really slow, and Google tends to penalize people on the mobile version when it's really slow. So you want to make sure that you have an image that works both for mobile and desktop, or you have somebody help you do a little bit of advanced coding and show one image for mobile that is more optimized for mobile, and then the other larger image for desktop whenever only desktop is being viewed. There's ways to code that in there. So if you really love your big image for desktop, but it's slowing you down on mobile, get a hold of someone like us because we can help program to make sure that we're having 2 different images then. That's one of the really big things that I see all the time when optimizing people's website is the image is simply too big for mobile. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And then you can also use a content delivery network if you're a bit more advanced in your business. This is something that I find beginners and those that are, still working on building their revenue. It might be a little bit maybe out of your price range, or it might be a little bit more complex. So don't worry about it if you're in that stage. But as you advance and get your business growing, you might want to look into a content delivery network, especially if you have a lot of images on your website. It's a really good idea. It's called a CDN for short, if you've heard of that slang. And I'd also consider upgrading your hosting plan if necessary. So when you're doing these tests, especially on the GT metrics and the web page test domains, those really and really Google does tell you this too, but they tell you the time to first byte. So when that number is long, that means that your server is not large enough. It's not powerful enough. Think of it as like an old computer. It's just not powerful enough to serve the beginning parts of your website fast enough. So you may need to upgrade your hosting plan to something a bit more powerful. And I want you to keep in mind that every second counts. So we want to make sure our website page loads quickly as possible. All right, so let's go on to item number 2 that's a top mistake is poor mobile optimization. I kind of touched on this when we were talking just now about the page speed, because we want to optimize for mobile too for speed, but we also want to optimize for mobile for how it looks. More and more people are browsing your website from their phone. They are either searching from their phone, they are either clicking on a link from social media. I'm sure you can relate. I'm sure you do this as well. And you'll check out the website on your phone, if at least not first. I know for me, I don't really like to browse on my phone. I'm so spoiled with a big computer screen. I actually have 3 in my office here. And I prefer to shop and browse on my computer, but I will do that initial viewing, shopping, browsing from my phone if that's where I found the website first. And if it's a horrible website on my phone, I may not go to it on my desktop to see if it's better there. It kind of depends on how interested I am in that information. So you may have shoppers though, or people that are wanting to buy your services that only shop on their mobile phones. So we really want to make sure that you're testing your website with various mobile devices. Now, the one really nice thing about this now is that most browsers like Chrome and Firefox, you can actually tell your browser to emulate or act like a mobile device. So this gives you lots of opportunity to test all the different mobile devices out there, all the various Androids, all the various iPhone versions, and some of the less common versions as well. And you can test your website right there on your browser. So we kind of anymore don't have an excuse not to test for the other different types of phones. Now, I know, I can totally relate. I completely forget to do this sometimes for our own website, but it is something that I'm trying to remind myself to do, because, we all get busy and it's something easy to forget, but it's so important. So I'm going to actually do this after recording this podcast episode. Just go check our website on various mobile devices. And we want to make sure that your website is fully responsive. And basically what that means is it will shrink to these different devices. It will look good on all these various devices. So we're going to want to make sure we test that. And we will link in the show notes on how you can do that in Chrome or Firefox, maybe at least give you a screenshot, but it is not too hard to do anymore. So I highly encourage you to make sure you're testing for this. Okay, so common mistake number 3 is complicated navigation. I talk a lot on this podcast about we want to be clear, not clever. So if customers can't easily find what they're looking for, they're going to leave. They won't stick around for very long. Complicated and confusing navigation is a major turnoff for visitors and can make them leave your site so fast and very frustrated. I know for me, I prefer and like to see, and I find this helps all of our customers, a very clear about us section, a very clear contact section, an easy, quick way to get to that. So those are 2 areas that can build customer trust that I want to make sure you have easily to get to. It's at most 2 clicks away, but it really should be 1 click away and up in your menu. Now, depending on your business, you're going to want to have other things as well. You're probably going to want to have testimonials or case studies too. That also builds customer trust. But we want to make sure that navigation is clear and it's easy to find those things. We want to be researching for language that our consumers are using too, because if we're using our own language, it may not quite match our consumers, and that might make it confusing, and they might hesitate to figure out which thing to click on. When they hesitate, that's a chance for them to decide to leave your website. So you want to make sure they're not hesitating as they're browsing your site. A great tip here too is to get a friend or a business friend and say, hey, I want you to, well, one, you could just do it in a generic way. Say, hey, I want you to go to my website. Let me know what you think of the navigation. Try a few just like that. You're going to get some interesting feedback. Now, then you can also, for another set of people, be like, I want you to go to my website, please, and see if you can find page X. And you want them to try to find a specific page. So in both ways, kind of test different things. The first way just kind of test general intuitiveness. The other way tests how easy is it for them to find something specific they might be looking for. So I encourage you to have a few sets of friends that you can use to test things like that. It really can help bring to light some things you might not have seen or noticed yourself. And then not the last, but number 4 is a lack of clear call to actions, or CTAs. So this is a mistake I see a lot for people, is they don't have very clear call to actions. And your website should guide your visitors towards taking a specific action, whether it's making a purchase, signing up for your newsletter. There are so many different call to actions that you could have there, but those are the most common. Also contacting you for more information. And if you don't have clear call to actions for these things, then visitors may not know what to do next and just leave your site. If they get confused, they're going to leave. It's just simply how things are. And you want to make sure that they are prominent and very easy to understand. And you want to use action-oriented language. So we want to use action-oriented language such as buy now, sign up today. Learn more is a little bit more generic, but it is a common thing, but it can be very appropriately placed. Could be book a call with me. Similar things like that are really good call to actions rather than click here. We really kind of want to avoid the click here mentality that used to be okay back in the day and is still used, I feel like, a lot to this day when people aren't quite sure what to put, and they feel like it flows better in the sentence or in the flow of the page. But really, click here is super generic, and honestly, it doesn't really help your search engine optimization because there's so many click here's out on the website. If you have something a bit more specific that says, call Carrie, click here to book a call with Carrie today, or, book a call with Carrie today. I added the click here there. It's so natural, right? But book a call with Carrie today, or book a call with Carrie Saunders today, then that's going to get actually my name a bit more important to Google because it's part of a link. So making sure those call to actions are very clear is super important, and really a simple, easy tweak to do. It's just something really easy to adjust. And then the last one, number 5, is inconsistent branding and design. So we want to make sure that our experience for our consumers and our customers is very seamless as we go through the website. We want to use consistent fonts. We want to use consistent colors. Industry standard is no more than 3 fonts, typically, sometimes 4, but 3 is a general, 2 to 3 is a general, pretty good idea. So you don't want to bombard people with a ton of fonts, even though you might like it and it might look pretty. It does still create a bit more processing need for the consumer's brain to process the visual difference between all the fonts. So keeping it simple to 2 to 3 fonts really helps lighten the mental load on the person as they're looking at the website. And it's something that people don't think about quite enough, I feel like, is the mental load of looking at your website. And that's kind of where consistent branding and design come in here, because if we're inconsistent in our design and branding, then all these questions come up in our brain. We're trying to figure out where to go. We aren't quite sure, if this is the same website sometimes. I mean, when you click around, sometimes if it really dramatically changes in the color and the logo and the fonts, you might start wondering, somebody new to your website might start wondering whether it's the same website or not. So when we want to be easy on the brain and make things simple, we want to kind of design this for an elementary school person, as far as how easy we want to make it on the brain. We want it to be very intuitive because, like we say a lot on the podcast episode, a confused mind says no. So the more complicated you make it, the more potential confusion is there. Even though, an adult can handle this information, they're bombarded with so much information on the internet and on their phones all day, every day. We need to make it simple and easy, like a third grade level, so that it doesn't take anything to really process, and it's more intuitive. And then the intuitive brain takes over rather than the logical brain. So we want to make sure that we have high quality images and simple fonts. That's like the main key point to the consistent branding is that we want it to look good, consistent colors and fonts, and not too many colors or fonts. Really, I didn't even talk too much about colors yet, but we want to make sure it's only a couple colors as well. Okay, so let's recap. So the top 5 mistakes you could be making with your website is 1, slow load page times, 2, poor mobile optimization, 3, complicated navigation, 4, lack of clear call to actions, and last, number 5, inconsistent branding and design. All right, so that's all we have for this week's episode of the E-commerce Made Easy podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We truly appreciate every listener out there. We have been loving all the feedback we've been getting too as well. So we totally appreciate that. So make sure if you have a comment, you can email us at podcast@bcsengineering.com. Let me say that again. I said that a little fast. podcast@bcsengineering.com. And if you're on your mobile device, did you know you can text us? Just look in our show notes and there's a link that says text Carrie here. Make sure you do that and let me know what you think. It's super easy and super fun, and I'll be sure to reply back. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you're listening, and we will see you next week.